perspective.
Sure,
Chris?
sure. Thanks, Doug. It's a pleasure to be here. I did survive through the going private transaction, so I can tell you that you can live through it. What I wanted to do is give you a little bit of background up front. I prepared some notes. I've got like a top 10, which is actually 11. So I'll go through that. But to give you a little bit of background on the Restoration Hardware transaction, we began probably in April or May of 2007. And we did not close the deal until June of 2008. So it was a rather long and arduous process. And the perspective that comes forward in my top 10 or top 11 is driven by my experience with this transaction. It's the only transaction that I've done. And so given the length of time that the deal took and some of the twists and turns, my perspective is going to be a little different than some others that you might have seen. But we began with talking to private equity partners. We selected one, we moved to a deal, and in November of 2007, we announced a transaction to go private at $6.07. 3 days after that, Sears filed a statement saying that they owned 14% of the company, and we were officially in play. And I don't think any of us thought about that happening on the front end, but that absolutely changed how the transaction happened by having an interested strategic partner involved. The other thing that happened was, as people know, 2007 was a very difficult year. It was the beginning of the housing downturn. It impacted Restoration Hardware's business in the home furnishing sector. I think we were the leading edge of the downturn. And so while we were dealing with a competing offer or interest, rather, in Sears, at the same time, we were dealing with a declining level of expectations for the company. So how we dealt with that and the pressures that came to bear because of trying to go public with a decreasing value against the company also contributed. We had a difficult holiday last year. Ultimately, it ended up that we renegotiated the deal. We ended up closing at $4.50 a share, about 50% lower than where we started. So that also contributed to the process, and I just give you that as context for some of my top 10. Okay.
And Sears ultimately,
or top 11.
It ultimately went away, right?
Ultimately, and what I would tell you is there's two things I'm very glad about today. One, that I'm not an employee of Sears Roebuck or Sears Holdings, and two, that I'm a private company. It's given what's been happening in the market, it's pretty nice to not be having to deal with share price and issues going on in that. The total equity was about $220 million, and there was about 115 of assumed debt at the same time.
Oh.
The question was, what did the $4.50 translate to? About 220 of equity and 100 and change of debt that was assumed. Okay. So number one, these are not necessarily in a chronological order or in an order of importance, but first and foremost, if you're thinking about going private, first step is to evaluate all your alternatives. This is but one choice as to how to maximize shareholder value. And obviously, what we're all about, and what anyone who's managing a public company is all about, is maximizing shareholder value. There's several reasons to go private. For us, the primary focus was on some significant restructuring activities that we are embarking on. Restoration Hardware was repositioned from an assortment standpoint from about 2001 to 2005. What we never did is spend